Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the presentation, the webinar presented by GDI Consulting for the OASIS Unrestricted Pools 1, 3, and 4, the on-ramp offering. My name is Charles Perot, and I'll be getting us started. I'm one of the senior proposal managers at GDI, but you will also be hearing from Ab Vand and Maron Freedy concerning the actual content of the offering and some of the options in terms of the aid and the assistance and the expertise of GDI. Okay, without further ado, let's get started. We'll get a few administrative details out of the way first. First off, as we're going forward in the presentation, we're being recorded live. So the full audio and video will be available, and that'll be a link to that will be sent out within 24 hours. The questions that you have, you can submit those to us via the chat box. And the chat box, you have to mouse over to the right there and get that box to present itself, dialog box. And there's a second icon down that gets you into chat mode. You can enter your questions there. I'll be taking those, and so will Ab. And what we'll be doing is finishing the presentation and doing the Q&A at the end of the presentation with the questions that we collected. So feel free, as things occur to you, to send through your questions. We'll log those, and then we'll address them at the end. Finally, you can download the presentation itself in its the files, the stack itself, the PowerPoint, by clicking the link under the file icon on that same dialog box. So you want to get down to the third to the last icon and click on the file menu, and that'll allow you to pull down the PowerPoint presentation. All right, let's move forward to the background on the proposal process, the submission process, and GDI's role in this, some of the history that's been achieved to date. What GDI is a dynamic group for the assistance in the preparation and the management of proposal submissions with a focus on government offerings, which you can see here on the graphic. I'll just kind of hit some of the high points here. The 68% growth rate in revenue over the past year, 12% increase in IDIQ and GWAC wins. 23% increase in clientele. When we look over at win rates, you're talking about an 81% win rate over the past 3 years, which is a phenomenal advantage when you've got GDI working for you. Experience in terms of the management staff and the executive staff, there are over 50 proposal managers with 84% having more than 20 years of government proposal submission and writing experience, so proposal management expertise. Excuse me. In terms of the types of wins, there are 210 logged wins for 2018 alone, and these were multi-million-dollar proposals over the course of 2018, cumulative value of about $6.2 billion. So these are IDIQs and GWACs involving multiple task orders in some situations, other times one-time offerings. Take a particular note of the last icon here, the last graphic on this slide. In terms of OASIS wins, there have been 8 wins overall OASIS small business in the original. This was almost a year ago, and this is 2 wins on the unrestricted. More recently, though, the updated OASIS offering, GDI helped clients to prepare over 60 proposals and reviews on the OASIS on-ramps for both the small business and the unrestricted, including the 8A. So we're talking about a massive increase in the number of organizations who are understanding the need to engage the assistance of GDI and a professional management team in order to satisfy government restrictions. Finally, 4 wins on HCATs, 1 win on the unrestricted, and 6 wins on the Alliant offering. So these are all similar types of score first and then content progression types of government offerings. Excuse me. Government procurement, you can see on the graphic here, there's a vast number of government agencies and organizations that GDI and its proposal managers have experience in the preparation of submissions for major defense contracts, DoD components, and other federal agencies, including the ones presented here and more. So let's get to the OASIS presentation and what we're going to be covering today. For the OASIS URN, that's for unrestricted, pools 1, 3, and 4, we're going to talk about general information, things about times, dates, eligibilities, and so forth. We're going to talk about core disciplines and the volume structure, meaning the structure of the submission itself. What will you need to assemble in order to put forth a valid and compliant submission? Minimum requirements in terms of the requirements on the RFP presented itself, and for scoring in order to satisfy at least a qualifying submission, and then we go from there. The next point is OASIS-specific scoring system. What are the weights? What are the checks and balances in putting together a successful submission for the OASIS unrestricted? And then with those scoring, how that is balanced, what is the strategy for it? We move on to, what can go wrong? What are the things that, the pitfalls that should be watched out for? What are the reasons for emphasizing attribute X over Y? Then we want to talk about win strategy. Once you've made sure that you've covered all of your compliance, you want to get to what makes your submission compelling, what makes it a very attractive and then a much more potentially successful submission. What are the things that you're going to put in there to set yourself apart? And then finally, how to maximize your score. The bottom line is you want to make sure that you are in the most likely group of candidates submitting for the offering, and that means that the scoring system was established so that their cutoff, their selected number of submissions can be met, and so that you want to tailor your strategy in order to put yourself into that component that gets a full review and maximizes your chances of winning. Finally, we're going to end with the Q&A, as I mentioned before, and I will be checking through and assembling some of your questions to read back to Ab and Maroon, so that you can get the answers that you're looking for, and hopefully get you set on the right path for a submission here. Now, without further ado, let me introduce you to Ab Van, and he will take you through some of the details from here.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ab Van. I head our capture and proposal support department, and I'm going to go through the main part of this presentation. We have a lot to cover, so I might be a little bit going too fast for you or sometimes, but feel free to send, type in your questions, and we'll get to them at the end at the Q&A session. Okay, let's start with the major information about this offering itself. It's by GSA. It's a GWAC. So GWAC means that although GSA is putting it, but many agencies can actually, once you're on it, many agencies can provide task orders to you. It was released on July 11th, and it's due so far on September 11th. So we have 2 months. And it is going to be submitted through Symphony. I'll get back to Symphony, how the system is. That's an online portal that the government has prepared, and we have to submit through that. That's the solicitation number in case you want to look for it on the FBO website. It has a separate page from the previous OASIS unrestricted. And questions are due so far on August 7th through Symphony, not email. Okay, now going forward, this one has pools 1, 3, and 4. Sorry about this mistake on the title. This is OASIS Unrestricted and not SB. There are going to be 40 awards on each of the pools 1, 3, and 4. So overall, 120 awards. But many companies will be, as far as we've seen the trend from the previous awards, many companies might be awarded multiple pools, and they are actually going for multiple pools. The size standard is 15 million under NAAQS code 541330 for pool 1. Pool 3 is the exceptions ABC of 541330. And pool 4, the size standard is 1,000 employees under the NAAQS code of 541715. That is only if to be considered small business, which in case you're participating as a small business on this unrestricted bid, then you don't have to provide a subcontracting plan. Other than that, these size standards do not have any consequences on most companies. Okay, now the NAAQS codes for pool 1 are the most important one is 541330, 541611, and 54190. But as you can see, it covers essentially most of management, administration, and light engineering work. That's for pool 1. Pool 2 is, pool 3 is essentially exceptions A, B, C of 541330, which means engineering and military, engineering for military and aerospace equipment and military weapons, engineering for contracts and subcontracts, and then engineering for marine engineering and naval architecture. So this is essentially pool 3, and it covers most of the engineering work that most companies do. If you go into the R&D sphere, that's pool 4, which has different NAAQS codes. 541711 is the R&D in biotechnology, and then 541712 is R&D in physical engineering and life sciences. And the old NAAQS codes, 713, 714, and 715, are acceptable. So they can be used too. Okay, and then there are 6 functional areas, and we'll get back to these later on. We have to prove that the projects that we are presenting to the government as proof of our scores cover at least 4 out of these 6: program management, management consulting, scientific services, engineering services, logistics services, and financial services. We'll get back to these later on. Okay, I just wanted to show you some of the past performance of OASIS during the past years, and the figures here might be too small for you to see. You will get the slide presentation later on, so you can look at it better. But as you can see, in terms of the task orders, most of the task orders have been, the blue is pool 1. The other pools have had less task orders. This red one is pool 3, and the blue, light blue, is pool 4. So these are the 3 that we are of our concern to us. But if you look at the sales for the different pools, you can see that OASIS has been increasing. A lot of agencies are turning to OASIS, and in fact have told our clients have told us that they're switching from their current awards and contracts to OASIS. So a lot of our clients do want to get on OASIS so that they can continue with their contracts that they already have with many agencies. And as you can see again here, blue, red, and light blue are the ones for the 1, 3, and 4 pools, and you can see that pools 1 and 3 are the most active in this area. You probably can't see the numbers, but blue, which is pool 1, is 1.6 billion in 2018, and then pool 3 is $1.4 billion, and pool 4 is $700 million in 2018 alone. If you look at the difference between small business, this is small business, and this is unrestricted, you can see that in the unrestricted part, the previous slide was the two together. Here they're split, and you can see that the obligated amount for pool 3 is a little bit even higher than pool 1. This says $1 billion, and this is nearly $900 million for pool 1. So $1 billion for pool 3, and 900 for pool 1, and $500 million for pool 4. Okay, for those who are not familiar with self-scoring, I will go very quickly over it so you have a notion of what it is. Essentially, the way it's set up is that instead of writing a proposal, these self-scoring systems do not have any writing involved in the proposal. It's a lot of document management. And the way it works is like this. You assess yourself and fill out a self-scoring spreadsheet on Symphony Online based on the criteria that they give in sections L and M of the RFP. So essentially, you first score yourself, and then secondly, you have to substantiate your claims. You substantiate that those scores by providing the needed documents. And the RFP in sections L and M goes into detail what documents you need to provide. So it seems simple. You score yourself, and then you provide the documents. Unfortunately, it's not that simple, and there are a lot of equations that you have to resolve to solve to get that. But we'll get to that later. Now, the way government is going to do it is they review the proposals for compliance and remove all non-compliant proposals. So that's their first line of defense. You really want to be compliant, and it's really important. I'll show you a graph of how many companies have been eliminated for not being compliant in previous submissions. So that's the first thing that the government will do. After that, they rank the proposals based on the scores that you have declared. Then they start checking those substantiations, and they perhaps will not accept this, not accept that, and based on that, they will juggle around those rankings, and then they pick the top 40, in this case, of each pool. So this is the process that the government is going to do. So essentially, they're putting the burden on us on putting everything together and self-scoring and all of that, and they'll just check to make sure that we've done our job properly. So that's essentially what a self-scoring system is. Now, for the OASIS, the score is 10,000. So that's the maximum that you can get out of the score. Now, it's split into these 5 areas. Primary experience, and I will get to what they are. There are 5 contracts that you present. You get 3,650 points for those 5 best contracts that you provide to the government. Secondary experience, 350 points. I'll get to them. 2 types of contracts that you provide. Those that cover as many agencies as they can. And the second one is they want to know how many multiple award IDIQs or BPAs you have. So you get some score for it. But as you can see, the score you get is not very much for it. Past performance rating, you get 3,000 points for it. Yeah, for the 5 contracts that you present, each, if you have exceptional past performance, you get 600 points. 5 times 600, you get 3,000 points. And then for those same 5 contracts, you get 200 points if you have reached the small business goals in that contract. So 200 points times 5, you get 1,000 points for reaching the small business goals. And then finally, what they call system certs and clearances, you get 2,000 points. Whether you have an approved purchasing system, EVMS, or ISOs, CMMI, top secret clearance, all of those get you some score, and the overall, the maximum you can get is 2,000. So these add up to 10,000, and we'll get to them later on in more detail. Now, based on that 10,000, let's look at what the previous, when we say original, it means 2013, 2014 bidding period. The previous OASIS, these are the minimum numbers. In other words, if they picked 40, for example, the 40th company on pool 1 had 7,825. The rest, the 39 other companies had higher than this. So this is the lowest winning number. And as you can see, the numbers are in the 75 and above, 7,500 and above range. Now, we expect the numbers to go slightly higher this time. One reason is because of partnering, and I will get to that, because previously you were not allowed to partner, but it might, and I say might, and I will let you know why, it might be that they will allow it this time. And also the fact that last time a lot of companies were eliminated because of compliance. Perhaps this time they've learned their lessons, and so you know, we'll get better competition this time. Okay, what is the proposal structure? There used to be a proposal structure, 6 volumes, volumes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and they had explained in their previous OASIS submissions how to separate out the documents and everything. Now they have removed that completely because you have to submit through Symphony. And in Symphony, which is a portal, in the RFP, they do tell you document by document where to submit in Symphony. So there is essentially no volume structure this time for the unrestricted. You just have to know which document to submit which document where on Symphony. And so as you're hearing me, Symphony is not that simple. Charles knows that. He's been submitting a lot to Symphony. Symphony is not that simple. It's not just a copy paste. It takes probably a day or two for you to submit all the documents and then check and make sure that everything is properly there and you get the proper score. Okay, now what are the minimum requirements or the pass-fail for this project? These minimum requirements, you don't get any scores for them. It's just the minimum requirement that the government checks before even looking at the rest of your proposal. So if you don't have any of these, they'll just put aside the entire proposal. There are a lot of them, but the most important ones I've listed here. First of all, you need to have an acceptable accounting system. Now, most large businesses do have that already, but even if you don't have it, but are ready to be audited by DCAA or DCMA, you're good to go. So there's a form that you fill out and say, hey, we do have the system in place and we are ready to be audited. If you say that and you proclaim that, that's good. You are okay. But the main thing that is pass-fail are the second part, which are the 3 contracts that you must provide. 3 contracts, not 2, 3, and all 3 must have these requirements. They must be federal. You must be prime on them, so no subcontracts on federal contracts are accepted. You must be prime on them. They must have been done during the last 5 years, in other words, completed within the last 5 years, or if they're ongoing, they must have at least 1 year of performance. So you can't use a contract that you got 3 months ago. You need to have 1 year of performance. There are some exceptions and things like that, but this is essentially it. Now, the annual value of each contract must be $3 million or greater. For the small business side on OASIS, they didn't have this, but they have that for the large businesses, so that the 3 contracts that you provide, they too must be larger than $3 million annually. And when I say annually, it means that if you have a project that you did in 2 years and it was $5 million, that's not acceptable because that's the annual for that would be 2.5. Now, also the NAICS or the PSC of the contract must correspond to the allowed NAICS and PSC of the pool that you're going for. So if you're going for pool 3, for example, the NAICS and the PSC or the PSC must show 541330 exception A, B, or C, or the PSC must be R425, and then you must show that it was some sort of an engineering job. So it is important to have the proper NAICS code for these 3 projects. And then finally, the CPAR or the PPQ must show a minimum of satisfactory rating for your performance. If you don't have a CPAR but can get a PPQ filled, a special PPQ form comes with the OASIS documents, and you have to get it filled and returned back to you, and you put it in the justification documents. It's not sent to the government directly. So these are the minimums. So you need 3 contracts with these requirements to actually participate in this OASIS project. But how do you get the scores? So from here on, I'm going to talk about those factors that will give you scores. The most important one is what they call primary relevant experience projects. And if you remember, you would get 3,625, I think, points for it. So you need to provide 5 contracts, 5. You can provide a minimum of 3, but that doesn't get you anywhere because you're not going to win. You need to have 5 contracts with the following requirements. So these are the minimum requirements for the contracts. They can be federal or commercial. So here you have an open hand to use commercial contracts. But you must be prime on them. So it's a federal contract you can use. It's a commercial contract you can use, but on both of them, you need to be prime on them. Previously, if you were a subcontractor to a prime government contract, it was not allowed. Okay, so you need to be prime on the contract. Again, here you need to have it's need to being completed within the last 5 years, or if it's ongoing, you need at least 1 year of performance. Now, what is that exception that I talked about? If the contract was completed and had a period of performance less than a year, say you did a project for 6 months, that's acceptable, and it was finished. Or it might be ongoing, and perhaps, for example, you got it 9 months ago. If you can get a complete CPAR for it from the government, that's acceptable too. But other than these exceptions, you need to have at least 1 year of full performance if it's an ongoing project. Now, the annual value, again, must be over $3 million, but there's another requirement here for these 5. This requirement was not for those 3, which were the minimum requirement pass-fail. But here for these 5, the sum of the annual values must be over $25 million. So you can't use, say, 5 contracts, each of them, say, a little bit over $3 million. That would be $15 million. The sum must be over 25. So you need to bring in some larger ones, say 1 or 2, 10 million, 15 million ones to get over this limit. Also, if you remember, I mentioned core disciplines. There were 6 of them. Program management, management consulting, scientific services, engineering services, logistics services, and financial services. You must show that each of these 5 contracts in the statement of work, or the PWS, they do cover 4 out of those 6 core disciplines. Okay. The reason for this is that if you look at the requirements, there's nothing said about NAICS codes or PSC codes. So it doesn't limit you to have the proper NAICS code or PSC code. That's not a minimum requirement. But what if I bring in a construction project? Well, this stops you from doing that. In other words, the statement of work and the PWS must cover 4 out of those 6 core disciplines. Now, finally, the CPAR or the PPQ must be at least a minimum satisfactory. Now, if you want to win, you need to have exceptional. If you get satisfactory, you get nowhere. Don't use that project with a satisfactory rating. But as far as the minimum requirements for these 5 projects, you must have a satisfactory rating. Now, what are the factors in these 5 projects that get you the score? There are 10 of them. So it's really a equation of x to the 10 points, because there are 10 variables that change the score. I'll list them and I'll explain what I mean. If you have the proper NAICS code, and remember I said it's not a mandatory requirement for these 5 contracts, but if you have the proper NAICS code, you do get more score, NAICS code or PSC. If the annual value of the contract, so if the annual value is over $50 million, you get 100 points. But if it's, say, between 20 to 50, you get 75 points. So depending on the annual value of the contract, you get some score. Number of core disciplines. Remember I said you have to cover 4 out of the 6. What if you cover 5 out of the 6 or 6 out of the 6? You get more score. Number of subcontractors. If you can show that you did this job with at least 3 subcontractors, you get more score. Ancillary services and ancillary products provided to the government. That means in doing the project, you did some ancillary, additional services and additional products to the government. You get score for that. Performance in multiple locations. If you can show that you did it between 2 to 4 locations, you get some score. If you show that you did the project in more than 5 or more locations, you get more score. Performance in OCONUS. If you did the project in Europe, in Africa, in Asia, whatever, you get score. And remember, this is OCONUS, so projects done in Hawaii, in Alaska, in Guam, in Costa Rica, all of that is considered OCONUS, and you get score for it. Cost reimbursable contracts, you get score for it compared to firm fixed price. Whether you fulfilled the small business goals of the contract, you get more score, 200 points for that. And then past performance rating is 800 points for exceptional. So as you can see, these are the things that actually give you the score. So it's a combination of these, and it's not that, when picking the best 5 contracts, you should go for the highest, largest one. That's not going to get you anywhere. Sometimes a very small project, say something near $3 million, the minimum, will give you a higher score than a $50 million project because, for example, that one was done in OCONUS and it covered more core disciplines, and perhaps you did it with more subcontractors and things like that. So it's a combination of all these 10 items that will, eventually give you the highest score. And of course, this is somewhere that we can always help you. I'll show you how with the number of tools we have developed to find out which contracts actually to use. And that's the problem usually that larger companies have. They have too many contracts to decide, and start reading all of it to find out what the best 5 are based on these requirements. Okay. Now, that previous section was what they call primary relevant experience. This is the secondary relevant experience. You get only 350 points for this. So it's not very important, but of course, each 50 points it really counts at the end. So you really need to maximize. And this is one of the places that you can maximize your score. It's divided into 2 sections. One is they want to know how many multiple award IDIQs and multiple award BPAs you have. The more you have, you get the more score you get. It's 50, 100, and 150. So based on that, if you have 2 to 4 multiple award IDIQs or multiple award BPAs, you get 50 points. If you have between 5 to 9 of them, you get 100 points, and if you have over 10 or more, you get 150 points. Now, there is a requirement for this. First of all, they must be multiple award, not single award. And second, you need to have at least 2 task orders or calls under them. So you can't use IDIQs or BPAs that you have not received task orders under. And of course, they must have been completed within the last 5 years or ongoing with 1 year of performance, just like the other projects. So that's one part. Second part is what they call mission spaces. You can translate that into agency experience. How many agencies you've worked with. They've bunched up the different agencies, federal agencies, into 5 areas. What they call protection and defense, which is essentially all of DOD, DHS, DOJ, Department of State, CIA, and FBI. All of that goes into one. So you need to show with one contract, just one contract, that you have that covered. It doesn't matter if you have 10 of them. You don't get points for it. So for each of these, you get 50 points, starting from showing 2, because obviously the having just one will not give you. So if you can show that you have 2 mission spaces, you get 50 points. 3 mission spaces, you get 100 points, and so on. So as you can see, this is another place that you can actually maximize your score. And do remember that none of these are mandatory. It's just to increase your score. Okay, going forward, system certs and clearances that I mentioned, 2,000 points here. And as you can see, they're divided into 3 sections: government systems, approved purchasing system, 500 points, FPRA, FPRR, or any approved billing rates, you get 200 points. EVMS, you get 200 points. Acceptable estimating system, 200 points. And when I say approved and acceptable, I mean that you have to show proof of a letter from DCAA or DCMA or a cognizant contracting officer saying that your system has been approved. Industry certifications, CMMI, you can see that you can get scores for it, different types of ISO and AS 9100. So these are different certifications. If your company has them, you get the score for it. And then finally, facility clearance, either secret or top secret. You get points for either of them. So the overall of this is 2,000 points. So if you remember, those scores, you have to provide the documentation for those scores. So you actually say, hey, this is my score, one by one. I have this, I have that, I don't have this. And then you provide the documentation. So that's essentially your proposal. But what can go wrong in creating your proposal? Here we are covering that. First of all, compliance. I can't emphasize more on the value of compliance because, as I said, the government is going to receive a lot of proposals. Their first line of defense is just to see which proposal is not compliant. And when I say compliant, it's both format and content, because the way you have submitted your proposal justifications, the way you have highlighted, because you have to highlight and put sticky notes on the PDF documents showing and justifying your score. If you haven't done it properly, the way they have asked for in the sections L and M, that's one of the non-compliant issues. Naming conventions for the documents, where you actually submit on Symphony, and all of that is really important. So the first thing that every company must cover is to ensure that they are compliant. Misunderstanding the requirements. There are a lot of very little things that you have to take care of. If you misunderstand, then you start using a contract that you're not supposed to use and you lose points, and vice versa. Sometimes you think you cannot claim point for something, and in reality you can. So reading the RFP sections L and M specifically is very, very important. and then understanding it properly, because as you know, self-scoring is something new to everyone. So we've seen a lot of proposal managers with high experience, 20, 30 years of experience, just not understanding the way it works. Late getting proper signatures from COs. Okay, so sometimes you need to get signatures from COs. For example, for the PPQ, if you don't have a CPAR, you have to chase around the CO and get a signature from them. Or sometimes you want to change the NAICS code or the PSC code of a contract. You're allowed to do that on OASIS. There's a form that comes with the documents, which allows you to actually change the NAICS code and the PSC or the PSC code. And if the contracting officer signs on that form, then you can use it and you can get score for it. And we've seen companies that have waited and waited for the government to do that, and on the last days the government has come back and said, no, we cannot do it. Or the CO has changed so many times, and they've been trying to chase these old COs for older contracts, things like that. So it's something that you really need to plan for. Now, next thing is not maximizing your score. As I said, if you understand the proposal requirements well, and also, so that's one part of it, really understanding the requirements and then maximizing your score based on those requirements. One other thing is partners, and I want to discuss this a little bit here. On the previous submissions of OASIS Unrestricted, you were not allowed to provide partners. And when I say partners, I'm specifically talking about prime sub relationship. Not JVs. JVs you can, but if it's a JV, you need to have the project done in the name of the JV. But I'm talking about prime sub relationships. They call it in this in the OASIS documents, if you look at it, they call it a CTA, but it's essentially a prime sub relationship. Now, this was not allowed on the previous unrestricted ones. When on July 11th, the RFP was issued, it is in there. Now, I want to say that I'm not sure that it's a mistake or not. So it might be a mistake, and they do not want to allow that, in which case they will replace it probably, and change it and provide an amendment. But if they do want to allow it, then it opens up a very big opportunity for many companies, because the way it is written right now, the RFP, it does allow you to even use your partner's projects, even in the minimum pool requirements. So, for example, if your company does not have those 3 contracts, you can use your partners. All 3 can come from your partners. Even that, it's that open. And for the 5 contracts that you get the scores for, all 5 can come from your partners. So that's a way of actually maximizing your score that you should consider. But what we are right now suggesting to our to our clients, we have a number of clients who are contemplating going with partners. We are telling them this: have a plan B. So plan A is to go with partners, and plan B is that the GSA will come back and say, no, that was a mistake, no partners, you have to go by yourself. So have both plans in place just in case. And we'll see as soon as the question and answers come out if there was a mistake or they really want to change everything. I should say that in the this same thing happened for the small business side, and they really wanted the small businesses to partner. So in the original 2013-2014 submission, small businesses could not partner. They had to go solo. But then starting last year, when they started the on-ramps for small businesses, they did allow partnering. But last year when they did it for large businesses, if I'm not mistaken, it was not allowed. Partnering was not allowed. So something to see how it goes. Moving forward, not substantiating your score properly. So that's one of the things that can go wrong. You really deserve the score, but you do not do the substantiation properly. In other words, you do not, for example, highlight it properly. You do not provide proper reasoning, things like that. So that's something to make sure you do not do. And one other thing is stretching the scores too far. In the latest RFPs that GSA has put out, they have put a sentence saying that if we think you're stretching too far, we are allowed to completely disqualify you. So even though sometimes stretching the score might work just in case, but you need to be careful on that. And we do advise all our clients not to go in that lane. Because GSA has allowed itself the possibility of disqualification. Finally, the last thing that we saw last time, now because Symphony is new, they have used it previously on the small business submission. There was a lot of problems. Companies had a lot of problems with Symphony. And so not submitting the proposal correctly on Symphony is something that is important. Okay. This is that non-compliance example I wanted to give you. This is GSA HCATS. It's very similar to OASIS. It's just not for this NAICS code, not for this industry. It's for the education and training industry. Both military and non-military. And as you can see, let's look at the unrestricted side. Out of the 80 companies, 39 were disqualified, eliminated from the race because of being non-compliant. So it's not something that's only small businesses. Their percentage is higher, of course. But for the unrestricted businesses too, you can see nearly 50% were eliminated. Because of being non-compliant. So compliance is really important. You have to take care of it. Okay, what should be your win strategy in this? First of all, the highest score of all those variables comes from these two. Past performance, 600 points, and small business goals, 200 points. Together, these two give you 800 points for each contract. Now, compare this to the value of a contract. If the value of the contract, annual value, is over $50 million, that's the highest that you can get, you get only 100 points. 800 points for these two and 100 points for your largest contract. So that's what I meant. Having the largest contract does not mean anything. You have to have a combination of these scores. But these two factors are the most important. They are the king. They are king. Okay. Partners to maximize your score. This so far is allowed. So you really need to maximize your score, both your primary projects and your secondary projects. Everything you can get a score for, bring in a partner, because it's essentially, it's not those CTAs that are usually in GSA, like, for example, Schedule 70. This is essentially prime-sub relationship. Maximize your score. How do you maximize your score? Well, we've created a system. I'll show you in about 2 minutes how that does help us. This tool helps us maximize our score. And you can create something similar for yourself if you're doing it in-house to be able to select the best contracts. Maximize the use of your commercial projects if you have to. For example, we've seen some clients that their federal contracts are with agencies that just do not give exceptional past performance. And they have given satisfactory for everything. Well, they can use their commercial projects and get PPQs filled out and get 800 points for those. So that's something that is really important to consider again. whether you should use commercial projects or your federal projects. Friendly COs to get PPQs or change the NAICS codes or the PSC code. So if you have good relationship with the contracting officers and you have a contract that you think has the best things, everything, except it just doesn't have the proper NAICS code or PSC code, well, use them and change it and use that project. Compliance again. So that should be part of your strategy. And then outsource if you've not done this before. This is not a sales pitch. This is just to get you, get a proposal done properly. If you've done it yourself previously, of course, by all means, do it in-house. But if you're new to self-scoring systems, outsource it by all means. And or sometimes companies who've done it in-house before also, they get outsource review services. So that's something to consider as well. Okay, now I want to show you what are two tools. One is our automation tool and one is our self-scoring matrix. I'll show you what these can, how they can help. First of all is our automation tool. Now, we've run into a number of large businesses that have, say, 40 contracts, 30 contracts, some even have more. And it will take them years to, go through those documents and get all the different evaluating factors pointed out to find out which will give them the highest score. And sometimes it's even spread in different offices throughout US. They're not centralized. So we've developed a tool that does not go into their computers. It goes into the government's computers. So this only works, of course, for federal contracts, but it uses public information, goes into those databases, and then it uses an AI, artificial intelligence system, to actually pick the best projects for you. So you might have a large number of contracts. It's going to go in and find the best for you. So I'm going to share my screen right now and show you some of the raw data and explain what I mean by that. Okay, this is the raw data that our automation tool, that the AI tool, gets from the government databases. As you can see, it's a long list. And then it is very large too. I think about 200,000 of them. Different transactions, 259,000 transactions for this project. So as you can see, this is only for OASIS. So it has created this only for OASIS. There are 409 transactions that it has to go through and then decide whether they have the minimum pool qualifications. So the AI will go through them. And if you remember, the minimum pool qualifications were whether they had the proper NAICS code, whether they had been done during the past 5 years, or if they're ongoing, they have 1 year of performance, and whether they are at least $3 million or above. So it goes through them, and it's a slow system. It takes about 24 hours actually to cook and prepare the first list. And this is the first list that it created for us. This is a list of all the companies that do have the proper contracts, and it does list how many contracts they do. For example, MIT, the university, has 18 contracts that are actually in the proper NAICS code, above $3 million and done within the last 5 years or are ongoing with 1 year of performance. Obviously, we do not have access to CPAR information, so that's something we cannot check about, for example, these 18 projects, whether they have exceptional past performance or not. But as you can see, this gives us a lot of, this solves a lot of problems for many of these companies, and it does give you the list of the contracts too. So this is the list of the contracts for each company that do have that minimum requirement. So this is what the AI does for us. For each company, it tells us which contracts do have those minimum. Of course, since this is an AI project, it is 85 from our calculations, 85% accurate, and we need to work on that basis. But even with that accuracy, I think what we can show is that it's going to save a lot of time from companies by telling them, hey, these are the contracts that you can use, and they have the minimum requirements. So this tool helps a lot, and this is the first step of the tool. The second step of the tool is once we feed in the information such as, for example, past performance and things like that, it's going to pick the best 5 out of them. And let me show you the next step, which we call, I have to turn off and then on, what we call our matrix. This is our scoring matrix. Each of the rows here is one contract. Each of the rows here is one contract, and these colors tell me, first of all, green tells me whether I can use it as a minimum pool qualification, and then the second green, this column tells me whether I can use it as a one of the 5 contracts. And you can see that those with red, they have a problem. So let me enlarge it a little bit. And so that you can see. Okay. Okay, so each of these rows, as I said, is here we go. For example, this one has the proper NAICS code. However, the total value is 2,962,000, and it's done in 1 year. So essentially, you cannot use it because the value is not proper. So it shows that this contract cannot be used. Or this one, you're not prime on, you're a sub on. Now, this is the minimum that it does, but the more important thing is the way it actually provides scoring for. I know this is a little bit too small for you, but these blue ones are the ones that have been selected by the system to have the best 5 scores. And the score comes from these to the right. This score sheet gives us the scoring requirements. For example, what you get from past performance, which is the maximum is 600. If you have the proper number and you put a 1 here, it automatically calculates the score for that contract and adds the score for it. So this sheet can tell us exactly what our maximum scores are, where we are missing. For example, if partnering is allowed and I know I'm looking for a partner, I know that this contract, which gives me only 950, is the one I should swap with my partner's project, because the others have higher scores, but this one, which is 950, is the lowest score. So this way I know, for example, how to actually maximize my score by partnering. Or, for example, in secondary projects, right now I know that, for example, I have 2 contracts, 2 mission spaces. So I'm looking for, I should bring in partners to have at least 3 others. Or for multiple awards, right now I have between 5 to 9. So I need partners to increase that. So in this way, you can actually decide, first of all, maximize your own score, and at the same time, if you need to bring in partners, you know what type of score you're expecting from your partners and where they can actually be used. And as I said, remember, if partnering is allowed, all 5 contracts can come from your partners. The thing that you cannot bring from your partners are these: the system certs and clearances. The score you get for the system certs clearances, like top secret facility clearance, ISO, CMMI, and all of that, that can only come from the prime, not from the sub. So partners cannot be used there. But other than that, and that's only 2,000 points. Other than that, the 8,000 points, the rest of that, all of it can come from your partners. So let me continue on now. Okay, I think here Maron can take over from this side and explain some of the services that we can provide.
Well, thank you, Yab. Hi, everyone. So let's cover our services. Our services for OASIS on-ramp, unrestricted, basically cover 3 areas. Document management, review and auditing, and finally full proposal development. On document management, we cover selection of best contracts by utilizing our automation tool and further assessment of our staff. This combination, of course, is great. The result would be a huge time saving for large contract holders, as Ab mentioned earlier. For review and auditing, we cover compliancy and score optimization checks. And now for full proposal development, we cover scoring assessment and optimization, plus full proposal assembly, and that is cradle to grave, and full and multiple compliance checks, and finally uploading the proposal to Symphony. And this is our contact info here. You're welcome to contact us anytime to provide you with more details about our services. You can contact Ab for technical questions and me, Maron, for contractual issues. Look forward to hearing from you, and back to you, Ab.
Okay, essentially we now can go to the Q&A, and Charles can take over from here.
Okay. It looks like a lot of the content was covered sufficiently, or folks are still kind of digesting a lot of the information that's here. We've had minimal questions come through so far, but feel free as we're talking about the one I've got here. There was a question about slide number 10. You were talking about NAICS codes. And specifically, what is the significance of the code exceptions that you were talking about? And that's on slide 10. Okay.
Pool 1 has 541330, which is essentially engineering. But Pool 3 is 541330 exceptions A, B, and C. So if you have a contract that is only 541330, it's not compliant with Pool 3. You need to prove that if you're going for pool 3, that it is an exception A, B, or C. And exceptions, and I explained, are essentially either for military aircraft and weapons, or I should not say just aircraft, aerospace and weapons, and also for marine engineering and that sort of thing. And to prove that, because sometimes, or I should say most of the time, when you look at your contracts, NAICS code, it just says 541330. If you go to FPDS website, which has all the contract documentation by the government, that says 541330 whereas you really know that it was an exception. Now, the government has said that to prove the exception, in other words, to prove that it was some sort of a aerospace engineering job or marine engineering job, you also have to provide documentation showing which agency you did it for and the type of work. So you might have a 541330, but if it was for the Department of Transportation, that's not going to be acceptable. It has to be the agencies that are acceptable are usually DOD, NASA, NOAA, things like that. And then also you have to provide excerpts from your statement of work or PWS showing that the type of work that you did was some sort of an engineering in terms of aerospace or weapons or naval engineering, marine engineering, excuse me.
Okay. Let's cover one more here. It says, how specific does the PWS or scope of work, SOW, have to be when you are substantiating your core disciplines on your submission?
Okay, they have said that they want to rely essentially on the PWS. So you can't just, say, just find one word saying something very vague and then put a sticky note and start explaining, I did this, I did that, I did that. That's not going to be acceptable. The main substantiation must come from the text of the PWS or the statement of work. Now, the good thing is this. First of all, they have allowed you to elaborate on it. So that's one thing. Also, it's not only the PWS and statement of work. If you have, for example, monthly status reports, they are considered contract documents, even though you prepared them, but since you submitted them to the government, they're considered justifications. So if in your monthly status report, you've done something that does cover those core disciplines, which is not in the PWS, you can use that and use that as substantiation.
Okay. We have one more here, and this has to do with the teaming agreement. This is, when will we know if teaming / CTAs will be acceptable? For example, can a nonprofit prime team with a small business partner qualify?
Well, if you're asking right now, as far as what the RFP right now says, yes, you can do it. I just gave you this notion so that you're not left with nothing to do if they come back and say, hey, you're not allowed to do it. So you need a plan B for this. But right now, as far as the RFP is concerned, you can have a teaming agreement, a CTA teaming agreement. And as I said, I want to emphasize this. The CTA that they mention in the text of the RFP here for OASIS is different from the CTAs that you're usually working with, say, in Schedule 70 or other schedules of GSA. Here, it essentially, and I emphasize that, is essentially prime sub. So the prime is the main provider of the proposal, and the prime can decide how to use the subs, unless behind the scene, the subs force you to have some sort of a agreement with them. So this is essentially a prime sub relationship that is allowed right now as far as the text of the RFP reads, and you can use your subs past performed projects to get scores for. So this so far it's a go and you can count on it, but do have a plan B just in case.
All right, sounds good. At this point, we've covered the questions that have been submitted so far. If anyone else has any, you certainly are free to send those to the email addresses that Maron and Eb covered earlier. The presentation itself will be available, and you can download the slide deck itself using that file menu that is over there in your dialog box. But you will be receiving a link within 24 hours leading to a full recording of today's presentation if you want to review it. And also you can contact in terms of additional information, questions, and any questions about engaging GDI, please feel free to contact us at those email addresses also.
Okay, thank you, Charles. And with that, I guess we can close the presentation. And thank you, everyone, for attending.